All right, then I think we have enough of a quorum to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Reggie Hammond, and I'm with York Crescendo, and we are engaged with the Metro Atlanta Land Bank. I almost got confused there because of our guest today. The Metro Atlanta Land Bank to help build the brand and build awareness amongst stakeholders of the land bank and their offerings. And we're really excited today to present the second of a three-part series spotlighting some of our key partners. And today's conversation will spotlight the work that the Metro Atlanta Land Bank does with the Atlanta Land Trust. And if, like me, when you were getting kind of used to the space around land banks and land trusts and affordable housing, any of that is confusing for you, I imagine that all of that will be cleared up here in the next half hour or so. The conversation will be led today by Terica Bashir, who is the program director for the Metro Atlanta Land Bank, and our guest from the Atlanta Land Trust, Amanda Rhein. So I'm going to turn it over to Terica, and they will take you through a conversation that will end in questions and answer. The core of the offering today will occur in the first half hour, and then we'll take as much time as we need to continue to ask questions for the second half hours for those of you that want to stick around. Terica?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining. And if this is your first, or you've been here for everyone and this is your ninth, I appreciate you. However, if this is your first and you're here to learn more about the land bank, you can visit our website, www.metroatlantalandbank.org, and go to the resources tab. And there you can see all of the previous webinars and our recordings and learn more about the land bank and our programs. But as Reggie stated today, I'm excited to talk with you about one of our partners, the Atlanta Land Trust, and the work that they're doing in the permanent affordability space. And so I'll turn it over to Amanda to hear more about herself and the impactful organization that she leads.
Thanks, Terica. Are you pulling up the presentation?
I see it on my end. Do you guys not see it on your end?
No.
Okay, let me. How about now?
No.
Okay, having some technical difficulties. I'm not sure because I see it on my end. Let me.
Does it say that you're sharing your screen?
Sometimes there's a slight delay between you sharing it and it actually popping on the screen. So, be patient.
Okay, but you did turn it over to me, Reggie?
I didn't have to. It's open.
Okay. So I'm just going to the presentation and then I click slideshow and still nothing?
You have to share your screen. Are you sharing your screen? So on the bottom of your screen, it should be in green, a square with an arrow. If you click on that, it should show you all of the windows that you have open, and you should be able to take the presentation.
There we are.
There you go. Perfect. Okay, you can advance the slide. Yeah, great. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy to be here with you today. As Terica and Reggie said, my name is Amanda Rhein. I'm the Executive Director of the Atlanta Land Trust. With me at the Atlanta Land Trust, we have a small but mighty team comprised of Karen Babineau, who is our Stewardship Manager, and Joffrey Martin, who's our Development Manager. Karen works directly with our home buyers to usher them through the home buying process. And she also manages a lot of our community engagement activities. And Joffrey is responsible for the real estate side of the house, focusing on land acquisition, as well as construction projects and development opportunities. Terica, you can advance it. The Atlanta Land Trust is governed by what's called a tripartite board of directors. And that is a classic element of a community land trust organization, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail. But on our tripartite board of directors, we have three distinct groups that are represented. Neighborhoods, those representatives are drawn from the leadership ranks of the city's neighborhood planning units, neighborhood organizations, and faith-based institutions. Nonprofit representatives, which are drawn from the ranks of philanthropic organizations, nonprofit housing organizations, and other nonprofit and or service or advocacy organizations that operate at a citywide level or a regional level. And then lastly, public and private sector representatives, which include public officials, private attorneys, and private financial institutions who do business in close proximity to the Beltline. So I want to specifically point out here that within our public-private sector group, we have a seat that is designated for a representative from the Metro Atlanta Land Bank. We also have two seats that are earmarked for City of Atlanta representatives. So this really underscores our commitment to partnership with the Land Bank. The Land Bank was one of the founding members of the Atlanta Land Trust Board of Directors. Chris Norman, the executive director of the Land Bank, was involved in the early efforts to create the Atlanta Land Trust and has remained involved since its inception in 2009. So the partnership that we have with the Land Bank really goes beyond just a programmatic partnership. It's really deeply embedded in how we're organized at the Land Trust and how we think about the work that we're doing. Terica, you can advance it. So as I said, excuse me, the Atlanta Land Trust is a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to deliver and steward permanently affordable housing to support inclusive and equitable communities around the Atlanta Beltline and other targeted areas of the city of Atlanta. We were created initially in 2009 with this mission in mind. It really hasn't changed much since then. When we were created, it was done under the leadership of the Atlanta Beltline Partnership, the Annie Casey Foundation, and an organization called AHAND. And they recognized that as the Atlanta Beltline was going to be constructed across the city of Atlanta, that it would be important to have as many tools as possible to preserve and create new affordable housing near that public infrastructure project to ensure that Atlanta's low-income residents could benefit from it. So anticipating that project would attract new investment, new real estate development, new jobs, they knew that gentrification was going to happen and that mitigating displacement as a result of that would be really important. So the Atlanta Land Trust was created to be implemented alongside the Beltline project to try and mitigate some of those negative potential impacts that those single-family neighborhoods would feel as the project was constructed. So we've been working since then to achieve our mission with a vision for a livable, equitable, and economically viable city where historically marginalized populations and communities of color can access and benefit from opportunities and prosper. And the family that you see pictured here, this is Makisha. She was one of the first homeowners in the Atlanta Land Trust. She bought her home in the Pittsburgh neighborhood and has joined our board of directors at the Atlanta Land Trust. You may have seen her on the previous slide. She brings a really important perspective to our board of directors. We have a lot of community representatives, but they're not all Atlanta Land Trust homeowners. So she really helps us to understand what the unique challenges are that our homeowners face in the home buying process and works to ensure that we are being good stewards for those families once they buy an Atlanta Land Trust home. Next slide. So I mentioned the Atlanta Land Trust is a nonprofit organization that operates as a community land trust. So this is a very specific type of nonprofit organization. The community land trust movement was started in Southwest Georgia in 1969 as part of the civil rights movement. The goal at that point in time was to give Black farmers control of their land so they wouldn't be evicted by white property owners as a result of their civil rights activities. The movement since then has spread throughout the United States, and there are now over 250 community land trusts in operation across the country, both large citywide community land trusts like we aspire to be at ALT, as well as a lot of small neighborhood-based, very grassroots community land trusts that are seeking to preserve affordable housing in their neighborhoods. So the way a community land trust works is we go out and we acquire land, we build affordable housing on that land. We find families that are low income, typically between 60 and 80% of the area median income. And then we sell those homes to those income qualified families while retaining ownership of the underlying land. So we use a dual ownership model that separates ownership of the home from ownership of the land. When a homeowner buys an Atlanta Land Trust home, again, they're just buying the home, we're keeping the land, and then we enter into a long-term ground lease with that family. And that ground lease will then contain resale restrictions, which require that they sell the home to a low-income family for an affordable price when they're ready to sell. So we're basically asking our homeowners to pay forward the benefit of an affordable home that they receive to the next family. And in doing so, we're creating a home that is then permanently affordable. So every single time that home is purchased, it's purchased for an affordable price to a low-income family. So what we see on average is a community land trust family will stay in the home about 6 years. And then when they sell, about 63% will go on to buy a market rate home. So over that initial 99-year term of the ground lease, we're typically able to benefit about 16 families. So through a one-time investment in a community land trust home, we can create a unit that will serve generations of families over time. Next slide. So I've touched on some of these already, but there are many benefits of community land trust home ownership for both the community as well as the individual homeowner. It does create community control because we're removing land from the speculative real estate market and putting it into control of the community. Looking across the country, community land trusts can do all sorts of different things. They don't just have to do affordable housing. They can do affordable retail space or office space or farmland or green space. The point is to develop land based on what the needs of that specific community are. And what we see in Atlanta is that there's a great need for affordable housing. So that's our current focus. But looking into the future, we could develop property into other land uses depending on what the community's needs are. And we really anticipate that the community will tell us what those needs are. And that's why it's important that they are represented on our board of directors so that they can inform our decision making. Next, it does provide housing stability. So looking at national data, we see that on average, 2.6% of community land trust homeowners move annually compared to 14% for households nationwide. So it is creating great stability for those homeowners, and they're also benefiting from having a predictable and consistent monthly housing costs. So they're not subject to a landlord who could increase their rent without much notice or decide to sell their property and push them out. Community land trust homeownership also provides a pathway to traditional homeownership. As I said, on average, 63% of homeowners after they live in a community land trust home will go on to participate in traditional homeownership and buy a market rate home. We recognize that the community land trust model is not a good fit for everybody. Many people do aspire to own the land and the home in which they live. But for many people, the gap between renting and market rate home ownership is just too wide. So we can help to bridge that gap. We can provide a stepping stone for folks to traditional home ownership if that's what they aspire to. On the other hand, if you buy a community land trust home, you can stay there your whole life. And you can pass that home down to your heirs like you could a traditional home. And then lastly, it does create a limited opportunity for wealth creation. And that's done through our resale formula. On average, again, looking at national data, community land trust homes acquire about $14,000 based on an initial equity investment of $1,875. And we do have examples here in Atlanta of homeowners realizing a significantly higher amount of equity appreciation. But we do try and emphasize to people that the appreciation of your home is only one way that you are able to build wealth through home ownership. You also build wealth as you pay down the principal on your mortgage. You build wealth because you have an affordable monthly housing cost, so you can use funds for other things. And then if you get down payment assistance, that typically will be forgiven as well, and that becomes equity in your home. So the appreciation of your house isn't the only way that you can grow your equity or your wealth in your home. Next slide. So we do think, as I mentioned before, that this is a more effective approach to funding and building affordable housing in Atlanta. We lose on average 1,500 housing units every single year because of expiring restrictions, disrepair, and redevelopment. So we really need a more sustainable way to construct and preserve our affordable housing. We also found that almost 70% of Atlanta's Black families are asset poor compared to 22% of white families. And then nationally, the net worth of a typical white family is 10 times that of a Black family. So we have a real challenge here with asset accumulation and wealth building for Black families. And homeownership is a great way to work against that. And we see by keeping housing permanently affordable, a community land trust can also help to mitigate gentrification and displacement that happens when there are significant public infrastructure investments and communities are becoming more attractive. Community land trust model also allows for community participation in decision-making, which I've mentioned before. I've mentioned some of these points already. On average, a CLT family stays in their home for 6 years, and then a one-time investment in a CLT home will benefit roughly 16 families over the initial term of the ground lease, which is 99 years, and it is renewable. And homeowners then benefit from the equity built through homeownership while preserving that affordability for future generations. Next slide. So there's a lot of confusion between land banks and land trusts. The Atlanta Land Trust is often mistaken for the Metro Atlanta Land Bank, and I'm sure that Terica has similar experiences. We have very similar names, but different but complementary functions. So you've heard about what a community land trust is. A land bank is a tool for converting vacant, abandoned, or distressed property into productive use. That includes residential, commercial, industrial, and green space properties. Their core competency is acquisition and disposition of troubled, surplus, or vacant property. And although they are a quasi-public entity, they do not have the powers of eminent domain or taxing authority. You can see here, comparing and contrasting the two, the legal structure of a land bank is a public entity. The community land trust is a private nonprofit organization. For governance, they are governed by, the governance is determined by the state through an intergovernmental agreement. So in every single state across the country, that state will determine if a land bank can exist and how that land bank is structured. So it varies state by state. For community land trust, we again are just a nonprofit organization that's governed by a tripartite board of directors. And we are established in each state, but we're not governed by different laws that vary on a state by state basis. The mission of a land bank is to acquire tax delinquent, vacant, abandoned property and to connect that property to a responsible end user. For a community land trust, we seek to acquire and hold land permanently for public good. Predominantly affordable housing, but it's not limited to affordable housing. On the acquisition side, a land bank has special acquisition powers or preferred access to a property. A community land trust, we may have preferred access to a property based on the policies and priorities of the local government. So we've been fortunate in Atlanta to have at the City of Atlanta a great partner who sees the value in permanent affordability in the community land trust model. So they have started to develop policies that benefit us, but it really varies in each jurisdiction. As for the management and maintenance, the land bank is responsible for managing and maintaining those vacant properties that they hold. And they also have the power to hold the land tax exempt, which is really important, particularly for us at the Atlanta Land Trust, because we do not have the ability to hold land tax exempt currently in Fulton County. If you read the state law, you may interpret that differently, but currently Fulton County tax assessor does not consider affordable housing a tax exempt use of the land. So we do not have that benefit currently. And then, as I mentioned, we have an ongoing stewardship responsibility for the land. And then finally, as it relates to the disposition and end use of the property, the land bank disposes property to a responsible transferee according to the policies and procedures they adopt based on community goals. And at the land trust, we permanently hold the land, just the underlying land, for the public good in furtherance of our mission as an organization. Next slide. With the Metro Atlanta Land Bank, the Atlanta Land Trust has a formal land banking agreement that allows for us to do a couple of helpful things as it relates to the management of our portfolio. So when we acquire a piece of property, we can transfer the title to that property to the Metro Atlanta Land Bank for up to 5 years. During this period, the land bank is then responsible for the maintenance of that property. And again, they're able to hold it tax exempt. So it does reduce our carrying costs at the land trust. And it also, although we have to pay the land bank for maintenance and insurance, it reduces the administrative burden on the land trust during the time that the land bank is holding the property. And then once we're ready to begin construction on a project, the land bank will transfer title of the property back to the Atlanta Land Trust. And this has the overall effect of reducing our carrying costs, again, because the property is held tax exempt and the maintenance and insurance are provided by the land bank as a pass-through cost to the Atlanta Land Trust. Next slide. Just wanted to quickly highlight our area of focus at the Atlanta Land Trust. I mentioned the Beltline corridor. Our geographic area of focus is roughly half a mile to either side of that 22-mile corridor. And we are primarily active in the western and southern neighborhoods that adjoin the Atlanta Beltline. So that really runs from, on the north side, the Grove Park neighborhood, south and then east to the Pittsburgh neighborhood. We probably have the greatest number of units in the Pittsburgh neighborhood, the Oakland City neighborhood, Vine City and English Avenue, and then Grove Park. Those are the neighborhoods where we're most active currently. But we're really seeking opportunities in any of those neighborhoods along kind of the southwest quadrant of the Atlanta Beltline. And I think that wraps it up for me, so I'll hand it back over to Terica.
Thank you, Amanda. And yes, we do get calls from people confusing us with you all as well. So I'm glad that we are clear on where we each stand and can clear that up. So hopefully that makes things clearer for you all listening in terms of the differences between a land bank and a land trust, and all of the great things that the land trust is doing. And one of which is our partnership with them on the Permanent Affordability Pilot Program. So Amanda kind of mentioned this when she was going over the differences, but generally the Metro Atlanta Land Bank, we can sell and hold properties for any type of property. So it could be residential, commercial, industrial, or agricultural. And they can either have structures on them for rehabilitation, or they could be vacant lots for new construction. And we do not have any limitations on who we can sell the properties to. So it could be individuals, nonprofits, corporations. It runs the gamut. And we also can set the pricing for our properties up to fee simple market rate sales. But per our intergovernmental or our interlocal agreement with the City of Atlanta and Fulton County, the Metro Atlanta's Land Bank first priority for residential property conveyances is to neighborhood nonprofits, obtaining them for the production or rehabilitation of housing for lower moderate income individuals and families. So in creating this permanent affordability program, we take that prioritization a step further. We enter into a memorandum of understanding or an MOU with nonprofits that reflect the primacy of permanent affordable housing. And when I say permanent affordable housing, this is housing that requires mortgage or rent costs not to exceed 30% of a low and moderate income individual's monthly income for a period longer than 20 years. In thinking through all of that, the Land Trust was identified as a nonprofit partner for our pilot program, or a test run, if you will. As Amanda stated, the Land Trust was actually created to produce permanent affordable housing. And like she said, we've been supporting their production of affordable housing since their creation in 2009. So we were very confident in their operational and financial capacities with their proven track record in this space. So we identified 14 properties within their target neighborhoods for the pilot. And then our board voted to approve this pilot program in April of 2020 and to allow the Land Trust to purchase the 14 properties either individually or in small groups. And to date, ALT has purchased and completed the rehab of one property in Grove Park. And as we speak, our organizations are in the process of completing the sale for the second property for this program. So the way that the program works, like I said, we have both entities signed our MOU, our Memorandum of Understanding, in agreement to sell that the Metro Atlanta Land Bank would sell all of the properties to the Land Trust for a total consideration not to exceed 35% of fair market value. So this, in keeping their acquisition costs low, that gives them more money for project costs, allowing for more subsidy for that final low price point for the final homeowner in the community. So the Atlanta Land Trust was given a 30-day review period in which they had to notify the land bank of its intent to purchase at least its first property, and then complete the property acquisition application. And the application is much like our land banking, our other acquisition application. So we require your development plans, proof of funding, and this is for the entire project, not just for the acquisition funding, and then the potential date for the completion of the project. And then per the MOU, the Land Trust agreed to just continue their community land trust model. So they purchase the properties and then sell to the low and moderate income individuals under their model, which again, the buyers are required to occupy the Land Trust home as their principal residence and then abide by all the affordability restrictions outlined in their 99-year ground lease. And then upon completion of one or more of the conveyances of the initial pilot property, then the Land Trust will provide regular development and disposition updates to the land bank as they're transferred to the Land Trust homeowners. So the desired outcomes or goals of this pilot program are laid out here. So the Land Bank is one of 5 public agencies supporting the housing initiatives outlined in the City of Atlanta's One Atlanta Housing Affordability Plan. And so the Permanent Affordability Program allows us to create affordable housing units and assist the city in its goal of creating or preserving 20,000 affordable housing units by 2026 under that affordability plan. And the creation of permanent affordable housing is actually one of the goals in that plan. And in doing so, we are eliminating blight and revitalizing neighborhoods. And 2 of the core values of the Land Bank are transparency and accountability. So of course, we want an MOU that reflects that, one that stands on our foundational governing document, the interlocal agreement. And of course, one that is replicable so that we can easily expand the program with either additional properties with the Land Trust and up to adding potential new partners once the pilot program proves successful. And lastly, When the Atlanta Land Trust was created, it was understood that the land bank would be a longstanding partner. And this is evident by the permanent slot on its board of directors that Amanda spoke about earlier. And one role that the land bank was to serve was as a potential source of property for the land trust. And so now the land bank is positioned by way of this program to move forward with conveying property to the land trust to actually create the affordable housing. So in achieving all of these initial goals, it will allow the program to serve as a key tool in the production and retention of permanent affordable housing. The first sale that I mentioned earlier was actually 900 North Eugenia Place, Northwest. This is in the Grove Park neighborhood. The U.S. Attorney's Office actually seized this property as part of a criminal case back in 2016, and they in turn donated the property to the Metro Atlanta Land Bank. And we actually inherited tenants with that donation. It was a married couple with 2 small children, and we, of course, allowed them to stay in the property until they were able to save enough money to move from 900 in April of 2020 to become first-time home buyers. So this is the before picture. And this is the beautiful rehab after, completed by the Land Trust, of course. And so, again, this is a 3-bedroom home located in Grove Park. It's actually under contract for $100,000. And for a 3-bedroom home to be affordable to a family at 60% of that area's median income, the maximum sale price is $154,890. So at this $100,000 price point, the home would be affordable to a family of 4 well below that 60% AMI, which is great because this means that current residents could be buyers, which is the ultimate goal in this time where so many long-term residents are being displaced. So at this time, Amanda and I are happy to take questions. You all can utilize the chat box or the Q&A function, and we'll just take them as they come. Don't see any yet. Chat. Okay, I see one here. What are the biggest challenges the Land Trust faces in scaling up?
Financial resources. It's really just money. And it's not necessarily money for land acquisition, although at some point in the future, I think that it will be important for us to have a more flexible pool of resources for land acquisition. It's really the subsidy that's required in order to sell these homes at affordable prices, because construction costs are so high that we are unable to build homes at the price points for which we are selling them. So almost every single house requires subsidy. Those that are new construction, the subsidy is greater than a renovation, like the 900 North Eugenia property that Terica just showed you. That was great because it wasn't a heavy renovation. The house is in pretty good condition. And we did it through a partnership with Homemade Atlanta, who was able to source a lot of discounted and free labor and materials. But in most circumstances, we need $50,000 to $150,000 a home in order to target families between 60 and 80% of AMI. So we're just kind of always we're always fundraising to secure the resources to sell the homes at affordable prices.
We have another question. Does the Land Trust engage in any acquisition or rehab or development of multifamily housing? And the 2-part is, might the zoning reforms under consideration change that strategy?
The zoning reforms under consideration may create opportunities for us to do some multi-unit properties within the MRMU designation. We're actually looking at one in the West End right now, which we're really excited about. But we do we do a variety of housing typologies, including we have 3 condo units in our portfolio currently, and then we have a lot of townhomes that are in pre-development. We have 3 larger scale townhome projects that we're working on. 2 are in the Oakland City neighborhood, and 1 is in the East Lake neighborhood. And those in total will be about 120 units, and they'll almost be entirely townhomes. And it makes a lot of sense for us because those are larger sites, and it allows for us to create density on those properties in a way that's context sensitive given the surrounding single family uses. So I think that you'll see more and more community land trust townhome units over time.
Thank you. Okay, we have another. Terica, you mentioned the land bank would expand their partnerships for affordable housing outside of the Atlanta Land Trust. Would those partnerships include for-profit corporations? We haven't actually talked about what the qualifications or who our additional partners might be, because we're still in the pretty beginning phases of our pilot program. But pending its success, obviously the MOU could be replicated. We just need to make sure, well, actually, if the for-profit, I guess, could follow the community land trust model, I mean, that's the big caveat of the program. So to provide that mechanism for the permanency of the affordability, so that would be the main requirement, the community land trust model. And then, of course, meeting the financial and operational capacities, because they have to have the staying power to provide that permanent affordable housing. But so the short answer is we're not sure yet, but the long answer is if they agree to follow the land trust model and fits all the other criteria, that is a possibility. Any other questions? Okay, and while people might be thinking through additional questions, I did want to ask you guys to, let's see. If you could help us make these webinars better. So before you leave, if you could just take a quick moment to answer 2 questions in the chat for the webinar. So on a scale of 0 to 10, would you recommend this and other MALB webinars to friends and colleagues, with 0 being no and 10 being yes? And then secondly, why did you respond in the way that you did? If you could put that in 2 separate responses. So 0 to 10, would you recommend, and why? We would greatly appreciate you.
I'm going to take the lack of additional questions as a reflection that the presentations were quite thorough. I definitely think so. I'm seeing some comments pop in, so thank you for sharing feedback on the webinars. We really take that feedback that you share on this assessment to heart. I just want to say thank you so much, both Terica and Amanda, for making great presentations to explain the programs and the impact of your work, both individually and collectively. It's quite a partnership, particularly in a time in the city where affordable housing is in such on the forefront of things that Atlantans are thinking about its future prosperity. So it's great to hear of that work. And on behalf of the folks joining in, we want to thank you for sharing it. And then finally, I also want to just thank those that joined this webinar. We're really excited about bringing this series to you. This is the second of a 3-part series that we're doing to Spotlight Partners. The third will be excuse me, will be on the last Monday of November. The registration is already open. So if you use the same link that you used to register for this one, it will take you to select date options, and you can just select the November date. And that way you'll be confirmed to begin. You'll get the date, the link to the webinar in time to be able to join us. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. We're going to close out our time today and give you a few minutes of your time back. That's always a good thing. And hopefully you have an amazing day. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, wait, Reggie, we did get one additional question in the Q&A. I want to make sure we answer Mr. Brown's question. Do you anticipate an uptick in land/home availability should there be an increase in foreclosures in the near future? I think, well, as it relates to anyone purchasing, then yes, but the land bank does not have priority with the tax commissioner. And so if there are tax foreclosures, it doesn't necessarily have a big impact on our acquisition because we would have to go through the same bidding process as everyone else. However, we are in partnership with the City of Atlanta. And if you joined the webinar last month, you heard about the demo lien foreclosure project that we're partnering with the city on. And so code enforcement, if they demolish or remediate any code violations on properties and the owner never comes to court, then the city is actually starting to foreclose on those demo liens. So whatever cost that the city incurs with the remediations, if it's cleaning and closing or all the way up to demolition, then they'll put a lien on the house in that amount. And then now they're actually starting to foreclose. And then those are becoming available to both the Atlanta Land Bank, the single family, and the and Invest Atlanta for the multi-families. And Amanda, I don't know if you wanted to add any additional color.
All right, we'll close out our time today. Thank you for grabbing that last question for us, Terica. Have an amazing day, everyone. Take care.